In the land of plenty, in a retirement community known for security and good neighbors, terror mysteriously strikes. A vicious killer is on the loose, targeting the least likely victims.
I've never experienced anything like this in my career.
Unforgiving, ferocious attacks leave behind a bloody trail.
This was a tidal wave of violence.
Rattling even the most hardened of cops.
You know, you just looked at the body and you go, oh my God, why was it so brutal?
And pushing a young detective to exhaustion in his race to stop the bloodshed.
The pressure was overwhelming. I don't think I got a lot of sleep at all.
With the body count rising, investigators turn to forensic science, desperate to capture one of the most unexpected killers to ever stalk the sunny streets of Riverside County. Canyon Lake, California, an hour from Los Angeles. A sunny and safe oasis, a place where residents know their neighbors and where nobody locks their doors. Protected by a 12-foot wall and 24-hour security, Canyon Lake is a safe place to live. Or is it? It's February 16th, 1994.
Norma?
Alice Williams drops in on her 86-year-old friend, Norma Davis. She's worried that she hasn't heard from Norma in 2 days. They'd planned a trip to the beauty salon. Alice's concern turns to horror when she finds her friend dead. Detective Joe Greco arrives from the nearby Riverside County Sheriff's Department. It's the most horrific crime scene the young detective has ever witnessed.
I've never experienced anything like this in my career at that point. So I felt a heavy burden to really do the best I could, you know, in solving this case.
Greco notes that Norma has been strangled and stabbed twice.
The knife was protruding, and all you could see was the handle. It was completely embedded. It told me that the killer was extremely violent, probably enraged over what I didn't know.
Greco wonders who could possibly have anything against Norma Davis, a widow who spent her time golfing and playing bridge. Who would want her dead? Criminalists Alyssa Mayo and Ricky Cooksey move in to examine the victim's body.
Of the crime scenes that I've been to, the knives are usually out of the body, taken with a suspect to not leave evidence behind. So it's unusual to have knives left in the victim's body.
The knives were inserted all the way to the hilt, both in the neck and in the chest. And this was a substantial amount of force going into the body to put the knife in there.
For Mayo, the violent nature of the crime is shocking.
In all my years in criminalistics and going out to crime scenes, I can honestly say I've only seen this less than a handful of times.
While searching the house for clues, Greco moves to the kitchen and finds 2 blades missing from a knife block, suggesting that Norma might have been slain with her very own kitchen knives. But was the attack premeditated, or was it a case of a burglary gone wrong?
It didn't appear initially as if the house was ransacked. Norma's Medicare check was still on the counter in the kitchen, and that was not taken. So the police were very much wondering about the motivation of the killer.
Greco wonders why there are no signs of forced entry. Did Norma Davis let her killer in?
Hi, Alice.
Greco hopes that her best friend Alice can provide some insight. Through Alice, Greco learns that Norma Davis was a golfer, a romance novel fan, and had many friends. At 86, Norma didn't exactly live a high-risk lifestyle or encounter too many dangerous strangers. So who did she know that was capable of such a violent crime?
I'm sorry you had to see it.
Scouring the house for clues, crime scene analyst Ricky Cooksey discovers a footprint near the door.
The dust appeared with oblique lighting. It appeared white on a wooden floor background. So I chose to use a black gelatin lifter, which is a rubbery type substrate with a coat of gelatin on it.
Can you need a pair of shoes?
See what I can do.
And gelatin is great for picking up dust.
But Greco doesn't need the lab to tell him the shoe print doesn't belong to their victim, Norma Davis.
It's a bit bigger.
He also notes the shoe bears an identifiable logo.
It was an athletic shoe. It was a rather small size, something that a woman might wear.
Could a woman have committed such a heinous crime? Was the killer someone who knew Norma Davis? It seems inconceivable. But Greco can't rule out any possibilities.
Was that Norma?
Can't let you go any further. This is an ongoing investigation for homicide.
Jerry Armbrust was wearing athletic shoes when she came to the scene of the crime, and that kind of brought up suspicion that it may be her.
Greco brings the woman and her husband in for questioning. They are Jerry and Russell Armbrust.
And when Jerry's first husband passed away.
Jerry was previously married to Norma's son, Bill, who had died years earlier. Despite being remarried to Russell, her relationship with her mother-in-law continued.
They are still very, very close, and Norma was living in a condominium that was provided by Jerry and her current husband.
Obviously, there was no forced entry into the residence, so Jerry was the first person to really look at. She had keys to the residence.
And so Jerry was the one who looked in on Norma, brought her groceries, and basically took care of her and looked after her.
Greco is surprised by Jerry's unusual connection to her former mother-in-law. He wonders whether she has anything to gain from Norma's death.
So she had the opportunity, and the motive wasn't clear. I wasn't sure if we were dealing with something with a financial gain here, or if there was something else going on. But because she was the primary caretaker of the victim, she was the first person to go to.
I've got to go. I'll be back in a couple of days, okay?
Jerry tells Greco she came by on February 13th. She put Norma's Medicare check on the counter and left without disturbing her, assuming her ex-mother-in-law was asleep in front of the TV. For Greco to tie Jerry to the murder, he needs to know Norma's approximate time of death. A pill dispenser may hold the answer.
Because there had been a pill taken for a Monday in the morning but not in the evening, they were able to fix the time approximately of the murder of sometime during the day or early evening of Monday, the 14th of February.
Norma was killed on Valentine's Day. As far as police knew, on February 13th, Jerry Armbrust was the last person to enter her house. Was the helpful former daughter-in-law telling the truth? Or was she a cold-blooded murderer? In Canyon Lake, California, 86-year-old Norma Davis is brutally stabbed and strangled in her home. It's the first murder to hit the quiet community, and residents fear for their lives. With no clear motive in sight, police focus on Jerry Armbrust, the victim's former daughter-in-law, who had both the means and opportunity to commit the crime. But is there any evidence to arrest her? While all forensic evidence is being evaluated, the police dig for other leads.
The community was worried that it could have been a transient, that it could have been maintenance workers, it could have been anybody at that point. So I interviewed quite a few people, just trying to find something that would give me some direction as to where to go.
Hey, thanks for your help.
Fear in the close-knit neighborhood turns to panic when 2 weeks later, on February 28th, Greco is called to the scene of a second murder in the same complex, only blocks away from Norma Davis's Canyon Lake home. The victim is June Roberts.
June Roberts was a 66-year-old widow who lived in Canyon Lake. She was very typical of the people who are very active. She golfed. June was a nutritionist. She was very interested in health and nutrition.
Greco notes June was supposed to go out with her friends that night to celebrate her birthday. He also notices an immediate connection to Norma Davis's murder.
It was clear that she had been tied to the chair with a phone cord. One of the pieces of the cord were tied to the arm of the chair, and the other one was wrapped around her neck.
The chair itself was over on June's legs. So it was, an unusual scene to begin with, to see that, because I'd never seen a phone cord being used to strangle somebody and then have it actually tied to something else with the other end.
The phone cord wasn't the killer's only weapon. The floor is littered with the lethal shards of a broken wine bottle.
It appeared that the wine bottle could have been used as a bludgeoning object to hit June Roberts. So it looks like there were at least two different types of forces that were applied to her.
Only an autopsy can truly establish the method that killed her. But one thing is clear. June Roberts was caught off guard. Did she know her killer?
I don't know if she had time to fight back. If she had been hit with the wine bottle first, that would have really put her out. And then it would have given the killer time to tie her to the chair.
The murderer appears to have walked right in. Just like at Norma Davis's house, there's no sign of forced entry. But similarities don't end there.
Both victims were elderly. Both had been violently murdered in the den area of their home. In both cases, nothing obvious was taken from the scene.
Perhaps the most telling similarity is that both the killings are too violent to be just burglaries. There's an expensive diamond ring on June's finger that the killer didn't take. Greco notices, however, that a couple of credit cards seem to be missing from her wallet. Suspecting a link between the recent murders, Greco needs to find concrete evidence to tie them together. Except for being elderly women and neighbors, what else do Norma Davis and June Roberts have in common?
At the time that this murder occurred, it appeared as if she was rearranging photos in her family album. She had a Bible open and she was reading some Bible passages.
A prayer list tucked in the Bible connects June to the first victim, Norma Davis. Were they friends? Greco considers the possibility.
The fact that they both lived within close proximity to one another, you could walk from Norma's house to June's house, no problem.
Greco and his team discover a photo that further suggests a link between the two murders. June's late husband, Dwayne, was friends with Jerry's current husband, Russell. Now Greco can tie both his victims to Jerry Armbrust, Norma Davis's former daughter-in-law.
I was leaning towards Jerry as being the potential killer because she knew both victims and she had access to the community. She could get in and out of the gates without any problems. So my focus was with Jerry.
Greco is determined to leave no stone unturned and asks Ricky Cooksey to compare the original shoe print collected from Norma Davis's house to a new print from a shoe provided by Jerry Armbrust. But the prints don't match. The autopsy on June Roberts only serves to muddy the waters.
The forensic pathologist determined that there was manual and ligature strangulation.
If the killer is indeed a small woman, as the shoe print evidence suggests, would she be physically capable of strangling someone to death with her bare hands? Greco begins to question his own instincts about the killer's gender.
At that time, I was 28 years old. I was a new detective. I didn't have any experience really in this area, and I was faced with a serial homicide case. The pressure was overwhelming. I don't think I got a lot of sleep at all.
Greco turns to forensic psychologist Dr. Phoebe Kelso. The FBI-trained profiler helps him piece together a picture of the killer, one that is definitely male.
When you see the amount of violence at the June Roberts scene, your first thought would be, it's a male. Because women don't want to see all the blood and the gore. They also don't commit crimes generally that are what we consider the up close and personal. You know, the stranglings. They like to use poison or they use a gun.
Could Detective Greco be suspecting the wrong half of the Armbrust couple? Could the real suspect be Russell Armbrust, Jerry's husband, who also provided the condo for Norma Davis, Jerry's former mother-in-law? Russell also has strong links to the second murder. He's close friends with Dwayne Roberts, the husband of the second victim, June Roberts. To assess if Russell could fit the killer profile, Dr. Kelso executes a victimology, a process that examines each victim's habits and character traits.
They both played golf.
You want to know these victims as well as you know yourself, because knowing the victim tells you so much about the offender. It's incredible.
The fact that Russell Armbrust knew both victims well suggests he could be a viable suspect. By stalking familiar women, the killer could have easily learned their habits and routines.
When we're dealing with elderly women like this, they're very, very cautious about who they let in their homes.
Hi, come on in.
Either this person knew the victims, or for some reason they were able to con their way into the house by making the victim trust them. They wouldn't have been very suspicious looking.
From Dr. Kelso's assessment, Greco knows that Russell Armbrust could fit the profile of the killer. But none of the evidence supports his theory. Greco has nothing to tie Jerry or her husband Russell to the crimes, and both their alibis prove rock solid.
It was frustrating. It was very frustrating to not have any kind of physical evidence or solid leads to follow up on.
With a murderer still on the loose, Detective Greco worries the body count will keep rising. To what lengths will he have to go to stop the Canyon Lake is in a panic after the brutal and senseless killing of 2 senior citizens.
For Canyon Lake, this was a tidal wave of violence. There's a lot of theories that cropped up. People were very concerned that this was some sort of an organized cult killing, targeting elderly women in Canyon Lake. They were extremely frightened.
These things were happening very fast, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time. From the first victim to the second victim was only 2 weeks.
The tip line was absolutely flooded with panicked community members. They were calling in about people who were transient, people who just didn't look right, people who were just strangers. Many of the elderly people either moved out, many of them moved in with one another for safety, and many of the adult children of the elderly residents came and scooped up their parents and took them out of Canyon Lake. They were that scared.
While Detective Greco strongly fears the killer will strike again, he's no closer to finding a suspect. Greco returns to the location of the last 2 murders.
Can you sign here?
Yeah.
So I could look at everything and try to go over it and over and over it and try to figure out if there was something that I'd missed.
But coming up empty-handed again, Greco wonders if the missing clue might be found somewhere else. Checking with the credit departments, he catches a break. He receives an activity report on the missing credit cards of the second victim, June Roberts, and discovers someone used the cards the day she was murdered.
We divided the receipts amongst the detectives involved in this case to follow up on the credit cards. And one of the places that I went to in particular was a salon in the city of Temecula where the card was used.
Greco learns that June's credit card was used to pay for a series of services. In particular, a woman had treated herself to a manicure, pedicure, and haircut just 45 minutes after June was viciously murdered.
She told me that the woman had blonde hair, described her as being between 5'4" and 5'6", weighing approximately 130 pounds.
Even more surprising, he learns that the woman wasn't alone. She was with a young child.
See you later, bye.
Who was using June's credit cards, and what connection did she have to the Canyon Lake killer?
So if you can just describe...
Working with the manicurist, a forensic artist puts a face to the mystery shopper. Shattering Greco's earlier suspicions, the woman who used the credit cards is not Jerry Armbrust. But was this the face of the killer? On March 10th, 3 miles away, in nearby Lake Elsinore, Greco is called to emergency. There's been a third attack. But 56-year-old Dorinda Hawkins is still alive. She's been choked so violently, she can barely tell her story.
A strong person, really strong.
Dorinda tells Greco she was working her normal shift at a downtown antique store when she heard a customer enter the shop.
Hi, have a look around. I'll be with you in a sec.
But this was no ordinary customer.
During the attack, Dorinda was telling the attacker, you can have anything you want, take anything that you want, let me live. I have 8 kids. And the attacker told her, I'm not here for the money. She fought back, and the attacker was telling her to just relax, stop fighting, that it was going to be over in a minute.
Relax, relax!
The attacker was actually standing on her while getting leverage and trying to pull the rope around her neck tighter.
Greco speculates that the thick layer of material from her turtleneck sweater likely saved Dorinda's life that day. At the forensics lab, Marianne Stamm examines Dorinda's clothing, hoping to find trace evidence that might lead police to her attacker.
Forensic scientists or criminalists collect significant evidence such as hairs that may be foreign to the victim and therefore could possibly have come from a suspect.
Stamm, who has collected hair samples from all 3 victims, now recovers a single blonde strand from Dorinda's sweater. Could this hair belong to her attacker? At the crime scene, Greco looks for any connections to the Canyon Lake murders. With cash still in the open register and no valuables taken, it's clear robbery wasn't a motive for the attack. So what was the assailant after? Greco is faced with 3 attacks in 3 weeks, the latest bearing no geographical connection to the first 2. Was this latest assault simply a copycat crime? If the Dorinda Hawkins attack is connected to the Canyon Lake crimes, then Greco may have his first big break in the case. An eyewitness.
Dorinda Hawkins was an absolute crucial element to this investigation because she was a living victim of this attacker, and she was able to describe in detail the attacker's description to police.
Confirming that the attacker is the same woman who used June Roberts' credit cards.
The most chilling detail that Dorinda gave the police was that it appeared as if during the attack, the woman was extremely calm, and after the struggle, it appeared as if her attacker had not a hair out of place.
Greco is hunting for a blonde, athletic serial killer in her mid-30s. But who is she? And how is she selecting her victims? With 2 murders and 1 attempted murder in the last 3 weeks, each one bolder than the last, the pressure is mounting for Detective Greco to solve the case. Can he find the Canyon Lake killer before it's too late? A vicious killer has butchered 2 women and tried to strangle a 3rd in Riverside County. The attacks are cold-blooded and violent. Forensic sketches link the 2nd murder of June Roberts with the strangulation attack on Dorinda Hawkins and strongly confirm that the serial killer is a woman. As Detective Greco continues to track a shopping spree that may be linked to his killer, he wonders what kind of person could commit such horrendous crimes and then reward herself with indulgence and pampering. Greco returns to Dr. Kelso for more psychological insight.
Female killers fall into 2 separate groups. The Black Widows will marry over and over and over again. The reason is financial gain. The other group is a nursing group. Their choice of victim almost always are the elderly. And then when they die, nobody's really all that shocked.
Anxious to find out if the killer falls into either of these categories, Greco accelerates his search. He goes from the spa to a new hair salon listed on the credit card statement, tracking the women's movements, trying to find out more about her. And he does. The stylist tells Greco that the same customer came in to get her hair color dyed from blonde to red. Why, after 3 attacks, would the killer decide to change her appearance? Was she closely following the investigation? Or was she disguising herself to kill again?
Norma was here.
Detective Greco, as young as he was and as inexperienced as he was, always went back to his basics and always went back to his training.
No signs of forced entry. The killer is familiar to the murder victims. Who is Greco overlooking? Greco starts to narrow his search.
The first purchase this person made on June Roberts' card was in Lake Elsinore. You would think that they lived in that area or had ties to that area. So I went back to Jerry to find out whether or not she knew anything about the suspect that I was looking for.
Despite once being a suspect herself, Jerry Armbrust is completely cooperative, anxious to find her ex-mother-in-law's killer.
I provided her with details of what this person looked like, and also the fact that she had this boy with her.
But Jerry can't think of anyone she knows with a young son.
I don't know anyone that has an 8-year-old boy. I'm sorry.
The following morning, as Greco plans his next move, he's paid an unexpected visit by a troubled Jerry Armbrust.
Okay.
Jerry tells Greco that her husband Russell's daughter, Dana, stopped over to visit the night before.
Hey, little girl, look at you!
Jerry noticed some disturbing details in her stepdaughter's appearance.
The height fit, the age fit. She recently had dyed her hair from blonde to red, and her boyfriend's son was with her quite a bit. And that she had once lived in Canyon Lake and still had a pass to get in.
To Greco, there is no doubt that the woman in the forensic sketch is Dana Sue Gray.
I knew I had the right person, and my immediate feeling was that we need to move on this quickly.
With no time to lose, Greco tries to locate Dana.
We've had 3 victims within a month's time, and we need to get her into custody before somebody else gets hurt.
Please leave message after tone.
But Jerry's stepdaughter is nowhere to be found. Greco rallies the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, to find and capture Dana Sue Gray. With 2 women dead and a third in critical condition, Greco knows the killer will strike again. They need to move quickly before another person falls victim to her wrath. With 3 attacks in less than a month, Detective Joe Greco has finally zeroed in on a prime suspect. The woman's name is Dana Sue Gray, who matches the forensic sketch of the killer to a T. Officers are dispatched across the county looking for their prime suspect.
When I learned that it was a female, I was somewhat surprised, primarily because of the level of violence. These are not the type of crimes that women in general tend to commit. They tend to be a lot less violent.
But Dr. Kelso's original profile of female serial killers was accurate. The suspect falls perfectly into one of the 2 categories.
Dana Sue Gray was a nurse. She had gone from living in Canyon Lake and being married and having a job as a nurse at a community hospital to living with a blue-collar mechanic who lived with his young son in Lake Elsinore.
On March 16th, a surveillance team stakes out her home.
Dana had lost her job. She had been spending a lot of her boyfriend's money, and he was about $10,000 in debt. She had used up his credit cards all the way up to the limit.
While Greco and his team wait for Dana to return to her Lake Elsinore home, additional police race to Sun City, 5 miles north of Canyon Lake. Another murder has been committed. The battered and bloody corpse of 86-year-old Dora Beebe is discovered inside her condo. She has been strangled and bludgeoned to death.
It appeared like somebody was really mad, and they were taking out a lot of rage on this old lady. The perpetrator or the suspect who did this was naturally stronger than her. And, you know, you just looked at the body and you go, oh my God, why did somebody do this? Why was it so brutal?
A phone cord left under Dora's body eerily echoes the first 2 murders. A clothes iron used to strike Dora Beebe in the head also likely caused her death.
There were similarities between it and the previous cases in Canyon Lake. No forced entry, the age of the victims, maybe the victimology of the victims, the fact that the violence seemed to be escalating.
Although investigators believe the cases are linked, they still need concrete evidence to prove it. Did the killer take Dora Beebe's checkbook? Back at the stakeout in Lake Elsinore, Dana finally returns home, and police move in for the arrest.
Dana answered the door, and she was surprised. She was in shock. She asked me what it was about, and I told her, I think you know what this is about, and you need to come with me.
Inside her home, police discover a stockpile of luxury goods. The killer has been on a steady shopping spree, just as they suspected.
There were diamond earrings, there were shoes, there were quite a number of mundane items, but all of these items would have provided linkage evidence to substantiate the fact that she used the credit cards of the victims after their death.
Still searching Dana's home, the forensic team finds more than just shopping loot. They find Dora Beebe's missing checkbook.
I realized that Dana was out killing her last victim earlier in that day.
With Dana Sue Gray finally in custody, Greco pressures her to confess.
Dana, you know why you're here, don't you?
Dana claims to know nothing and denies all of Greco's accusations. But confronted with the shopping spree evidence, Dana suddenly changes her story. She admits to finding Dora Beebe's checkbook in a garbage can. Her admission stops the detective dead in his tracks. Since police have yet to make the details of Dora Beebe's investigation public, Only her murderer would know that her checkbook is missing. For Detective Greco, this is the slip he's been waiting for.
Thank you.
I recalled in the middle of the interview getting up, leaving the interview, and going to talk to the detective that was working that case.
Detectives Greco and Cordova now know for sure that just hours before her arrest, Dana Sue Gray followed Dora Beebe into her house and savagely attacked the innocent woman, bludgeoning her to death. Dana is a cold-blooded butcher who kills and then goes shopping.
I told that officer what happened, and I told him.
Greco knows she's guilty, but does he have enough evidence to tie her to all 4 attacks? With a prime murder suspect finally in custody, police put an end to a community's month-long reign of terror. But Dana Sue Gray continues to deny any involvement in the killings, admitting only to finding Dora Beebe's checkbook and using June Roberts' credit cards.
When we asked her about credit cards, she said, "Oh, I found them." And I decided to use them. Then we pressed her further and further and further on, well, where did you find them at? And she gave us a lame story of where she found them and how she found them.
The noose around Dana's neck tightens when investigators, still poring over her house, discover a large collection of size 6 running shoes.
And from looking at those shoes and having an idea of a possible shoe print that was found at the very first homicide scene, I decided that we should collect all of those shoes so that we could take them back to the laboratory and look at them for blood, and then have an analyst do a shoe print comparison.
Ricky Cooksey pulls various prints from Dana's stockpile of shoes and compares them to the print recovered from the home of the first victim, Norma Davis. His work finally pays off. A print from one of Dana's shoes perfectly matches the one collected from the first murder scene. A handwriting expert proves that Dora Beebe's checks were most definitely signed by Dana. All evidence points to Dana's guilt, but investigators need to build an airtight case to ensure a solid conviction. Hair analysis allows investigators to prove that witness descriptions of the killer were consistent with Dana's hair color changes.
I asked the investigators to bring in the suspect's hairbrush. I was able to see a trend where the suspect's hair was most likely a blonde or a light brown color, versus later on, towards her last victim, she had changed her hair color more to a reddish color.
The most damning evidence of all comes from Dorinda Hawkins, the one victim that looked Dana Sue Gray in the eyes and survived. But Detective Greco still needs a motive. Why did Dana kill Norma Davis? A woman she was quite fond of. A woman she called Nana.
Dana, is that you?
Hi, Nana.
I made some cookies. Bring them in. They're right there on the counter.
Okay.
Norma Davis happened to live in a condo provided for her by Jerry and Russell Armbrust.
Detective Greco learned through Jerry that if and when Norma Davis had passed away, that Dana would be able to move into that condo. She was a very attractive young woman. She was socially acceptable. She knows how to talk to people. And so it was easy for her to get into Norma Davis's home.
With Norma dead, Dana could finally return to the lifestyle she'd lost and still coveted. And with the help of June Roberts' credit cards, she'd be able to maintain it.
Hi, come on in.
I think that she did enjoy watching them die, and that she enjoyed that feeling of domination, of power and control over them. I do believe that she was a psychopath. She absolutely seemed to have no guilt or remorse over anything. They're narcissistic. They blame everybody else for things that go wrong in their life. You know, the victim deserved it. She disrespected me.
How could a fun-loving California girl, who seemed to do everything right for most of her life, become a serial killer?
She was a thrill seeker. She liked to kill because she liked the thrill.
But for Dana, killing innocent victims wasn't enough.
It was very shocking to discover that during the murder of June Roberts, Dana had brought along her boyfriend's son. And that little boy waited in the car while Dana went inside.
Where she proceeded to bludgeon, choke, and strangle June to death while the little boy waited patiently.
After that, Dana went and got a massage. Apparently, the little boy had to wait for that as well. And she ate lunch at a fancy cafe and then took him shopping.
Detective Greco can't explain the killer's actions.
I don't know if Dana was always dangerous. I don't know if she snapped and something changed in her. It's really hard to say. It's something that only she can answer.
While he credits forensics for producing overwhelming evidence against Dana Sue Gray, Greco believes the person who really solved the case is Jerry Armbrust.
She's the one that deserves all the credit because she didn't have to help me out. It was her own stepdaughter, you know. That had to be very difficult, and it really changed their lives. It changed everybody's lives.
Dana Sue Gray is one of only 36 documented female serial killers in history. Unlike most women killers, she is distinguished by the level of violence used against her victims. Convicted at age 36, Dana continues to serve her life sentence at the California Women's Prison in Chowchilla, with no chance of parole.